Call the planning and zoning meeting to order. Where everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a roll call. Marcus Major. Here. Jaden Bailey.
Here.
Alan Stork. Here. William Gutschuk.
Here.
Jeff Spink. Here. Doug Tysted.
Here.
Robert Owens.
Here.
Steve Skeet is absent. Will Smith absent. And myself, Steve Rosenthal, is present. Okay. Do I have a motion on last month's minutes?
I move to approve minutes of last month.
Second.
Okay. A different spot. Who seconded? Motion on the floor with a second to approve June's minutes as printed. Any discussion? Have a roll call vote. Marcus Major.
Yes.
Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Alan Stork.
Yes.
William Gutschuk.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Doug Tysted.
Yes.
Robert Owens.
Yes.
Motion carries 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7-0. Secretary's report.
Good evening. Before you today, on your consent agenda, you have 4 plats. And as a reminder, once you approve the agenda, those plats will be approved. If so, then they will be heard the earliest on July 26th Board of County Commissioners agenda. You also have 4 plats on your regular agenda. All 4 plats are requesting exceptions. And then we have 1 language amendment request before you today. I also wanted to remind you that today you are electing chairman and vice chairman if you choose to do so. Again, those terms are for 2 years only, and members cannot serve consecutively. So if you've been a chair or vice chair, you cannot serve another term. So that is all I have for you today, unless you have questions.
Questions? Okay, our first thing of business is elections of chairman. Do I have a motion? And it can't be me, thank goodness.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Marcus as chairman.
I second.
Yep. Now a third.
Okay, so Jeff made a motion. And who? Doug?
Doug got second.
Where's Doug? Motion on the floor and a second to approve Marcus Major as chairman. I don't think we need any discussion on that, right? So we just have a vote. Marcus Major,
Not a vote.
you're going to abstain.
Abstain.
Okay. Jaden Bailey,
Yes.
Alan Stark,
Yes.
William Gutschuk,
Yes.
Jeff Spink,
Yes.
Doug Tysted,
Yes.
Robert Owens.
Yes.
And motion carries 6-0 or 6-1 abstain. Now, does he take over for vice chair?
I think you can move forward on the vice chair.
Okay, do I have a motion for vice chair?
I'll make a motion that we elect Jeff Spinks as vice chair.
Second.
Motion and a second by Marcus again.
No.
So you said Jeff Spink?
Is that allowable?
He cannot serve consecutively, so we would need to choose somebody else.
Yes.
Sorry, man.
Dang it, Jeff.
What if we don't want to nominate somebody?
Well, then I don't want it, so. Okay.
We will need a withdrawal of that motion first.
You have to withdraw it. And I have
I'll
to,
withdraw my motion.
and I withdraw the second.
Okay, we have another person to nominate?
I'm going to nominate Alan. You all right with that?
Your backs are hell.
Okay.
Motion on the floor to nominate Alan. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Floor in a second to nominate Doug as, Alan, I'm sorry, Alan Stork as vice chair. A roll call vote, Marcus Major,
Yes.
Jaden Bailey,
Yes.
Alan,
Abstain.
William Gutschalk,
Yes.
Jeff Spink,
Yes.
Doug Teisted,
Yes.
Robert Owens.
Yes.
Motion carries. Again, 6-1 abstained. Here's the gravel for you. I'll take my water.
Wow. Big move.
Couple more there.
I got sucker just 5 minutes ago.
Any explanations before I go? Or you think you figured it out?
Yes, sir.
It's all off of it's all in here. Just go down the aisle. Now,
Steve, Marcus, if you choose to do this, you can tonight. It's not necessary. If you wanted to finish out the meeting and then take the gavel at the next meeting, that'd be perfectly permissible to do.
for that?
Yeah, I would. I mean, guess
Well, why don't you move over here so you
that'll
can see what
work.
I'm doing?
There you go.
Okay.
Left
how's
seat,
that?
right seat, right.
Yeah.
Let's do a left seat, right seat.
Okay. Well, I mean, I sure don't mind one more time, but for old time's sake, but.
Farewell to her.
Okay.
Is that my water? Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, we had the election, so now declarations. Anybody have any declarations on any of the items we're going to discuss? Not, we'll have a vote on the agenda. We have, like she said, I think we have four items on the consent agenda. Approve the agenda. Those things are approved. And we have 4 cases on the regular agenda and including one on the amendment changes. Do I have a motion for the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, where am I not finding his name? I know where his agenda is, I just can't, I'm not seeing, there it is. And who seconded that?
I did.
Okay. So you can do that good.
Yes,
I have a motion on the floor and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? And have a roll call vote. Marcus Major,
Yes.
Jaden Bailey,
Yes.
Alan Stork,
Yes.
William Gutschalk,
Yes.
Alan Speak, Jeff Speak.
Yes.
Gosh, that's time for me to go, right. Doug Teisted,
Yes.
Robert Owens.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Okay, first item. The Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now hear case number DEV 23-043 and 044. Preliminary final plat as Bosworth Edition is outlined in the posted agenda. This is not a public hearing item. Staff report.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. Before you, as mentioned, is case DEV 23043 and 044. It is a request for a preliminary and final plat for the Bosworth Edition. The two properties in question are shown on the image above your heads there, but the properties are undeveloped, so they're 207th Street.
Ma'am, that's actually 170th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Typo. Okay.
Yep, that's a typo. I apologize. She's right. It's 170th Street. So the proposed plat would combine these two parcels. Just some background history. They were created through a process that it's hard to explain, but at one point a developer was wanting to subdivide out these properties. The development actually never was vested, or it never was fully approved. So what you were created was these bunch of laws that were essentially non-buildable because they do not have access to a roadway. The applicant, from my understanding, is wanting to build a house on the back portion of that large parcel. So in order for them to bring that parcel into compliance, they had to combine it with that front parcel. Because of that, they are not going to be able to meet lot depth to lot width. But this is a one-lot or subdivision in order to bring both properties into compliance with the regulations. As mentioned, they will need a exception from the lot depth to lot width requirement, which the applicant has provided their narrative for that exception. So first, we would ask that you first consider the exception and then make it a separate motion to approve or deny the plat based off of your interpretation. Staff did provide a full analysis, so if you have any questions, please let us know.
Any questions of staff? Okay. Does the applicant wish to speak? Please state your name and address.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Austin Thompson, and I work with the firm Atlas Land Consulting, who prepared the plat for the Bosworth family, who are here as well. And we reside at 14500 Parallel Road, Unit R, Baser, Kansas 66007. And just as staff kind of stated, we're pretty much just looking to be able to build a house on the backside. So we worked with staff closely to try to get the best layout possible. There was a much larger layout that had a lot of different, I would say, headaches that we were trying to jump through loops. So we came up with this idea that they'd be able to build a larger house on the back and access just to 170th, which there is a small access easement, and I'm not sure if you can see it on your sheet there, but just on the north line there is a gravel drive. They will not be using that gravel drive as access at this point. With this plat, they do have to now create a new entrance and only access to 170th. So we won't be using the gravel drive that is for everyone else. But we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and the owners also can answer anything that you might have for them as well. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant? Thank you, sir. Is there any additional information to be presented?
No, sir.
Are there any questions or comments, commissioners? I will entertain a motion.
We need a motion first for the variance.
Variance, yes.
For the exception.
Exception.
I will make a motion that we grant the variance exception.
Second.
Okay, so Alan made the motion and Jaden second. We have a motion on the floor and a second to approve the exception. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote. Marcus Major,
Yes.
Jaden Bailey,
Yes.
Alan Stork,
Yes.
William Gutchalk,
Yes.
Jeff Spink,
Yes.
Doug Tysted,
Yes.
Robert Owens.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Okay, now do I have a motion on the plat, preliminary and final plat?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the final plat as presented by the staff and in consideration of the Golden factors.
Okay, and it is the preliminary and final plat.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right,
I second.
second. Motion on the floor and a second. To approve case number DEV 23-043 and 044 preliminary and final plat of Bosworth Edition is outlined in the posted agenda. Any further discussion? Have a roll call vote. Marcus Major,
Yes.
Jaden Bailey,
Yes.
Alan Stork,
Yes.
William Gutchalk,
Yes.
Jeff Spink,
Yes.
Doug Tysted,
Yes.
Robert Owens.
Yes.
Motion also carries 7-0. The Board of County Commissioners will consider this item no earlier than July 26, 2023 at 9 a.m. at Leavenworth County Courthouse. Carried at a vote of 7-0. Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now hear case number DEV 23-052, preliminary plat, Kissinger Farms, as outlined in the posted agenda. This is not a public hearing item. The planning staff will now give you a report.
Before you is case DEV 23052, which is a request for a preliminary only plat for Kissinger Farms. The property in question is actually two parcels, 24138 and 00000 Loring Road. Those two parcels are identified on the image above you. The request is to subdivide those two parcels into a 9-lot subdivision. That right? Yes, a 9-lot, 9-lot subdivision. I heard 10, but we have it as 9. The properties will access off of Loring Road and also the road adjacent to it, which is 238th Street. They're on the east side. There is an existing house with accessory structures on the property. That house will remain with lot number 2 as proposed. There are additional other smaller accessory lots, but they meet the maximum size of 600 acres or less, so they are permitted within lots that do not have a principal dwelling. We also have an existing pond that is proposed to be split by lots. I believe that's 6 and lot 7. The applicant has provided a maintenance agreement on the face of the plat for that pond if this is approved. Additionally, we do have 2 billboards that are on this property currently. The applicant has provided easements. Staff is also recommending, as per the conditions of approval, that an access easement to those billboard easements be established as part of the final plat to ensure that the sign companies can get to and from the billboards to maintain them as they see fit. However, we also want to note that these billboards are existing. They don't have the current special use permit that would be required if a new billboard were to go up. So if anything happens to those billboards, they would have to be brought into compliance with the current regulations. Other than that, this application is also requesting an exception from the lot depth to lot width requirement for the lot 1. It is a triangle-shaped lot there in the corner. It would be very difficult to try and make this lot specifically meet our regulations. Therefore, that is where the request is coming from. The applicant has provided a narrative for you. And again, we would request that you first approve the exception and then approve the plat or deny the plat as you see fit. But otherwise, staff has provided the analysis for you in the staff report. So if you have questions, let me know.
You mentioned the signs. There's nothing that we as the Planning Commission can do about anything that has to do with future use of the signs or coming into compliance with that. That is beyond the scope of what we're talking about here, correct?
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, staff? Will the applicant please come forward?
Good evening, Joe Herring, Herring Surveying, 315 North 5th Street. Staff handled the report very well. The exception on the width to depth on the far west lot, that is a separate tract basically that got brought into the plat, and it already exists as a non-conforming width to depth type situation, but we just have to ask for that exception to have it on the plat. So any other questions, I'm here to hopefully answer.
Okay. Any questions?
You just answered mine. That's where I was headed.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Any additional information to be presented?
No, sir.
Are there any comments or questions, commissioners? Not all entertain a motion. Remember, we need the exception first, and it is written in your, that motion is written in our packet.
And Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we grant the exception to, as explained by the staff, on case number DEV 23-052.
Yeah, that's probably good enough. Okay, is there a second? Alan did that again, right?
This one,
There a second?
Second.
this one doesn't
Motion and a
count.
floor and a second
It's
to approve the exception from Article 50, Section 40.31, lot depth and lot width for the Kitchener Farm subdivision. No further discussion. Marcus Major,
Yes.
Jaden Bailey,
Yes.
Alan Stork,
Yes.
William Gutschall,
Yes.
Jeff Spink,
Yes.
Doug Tysted,
Yes.
Robert Owens.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. All right, I need another motion for the preliminary plat.
I move that that we approve DEV 23-052 preliminary and final plat as described in the staff's report.
Preliminary and final?
Preliminary and final.
It's
All right.
only preliminary.
No, it's preliminary on that. I'm
Only
sorry.
preliminary on this one. Got a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve case number DEV 23-052 preliminary plat Kitchener Farm as outlined in the posted agenda. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Marcus Major,
Yes.
Jaden Bailey,
Yes.
Alan Stork,
Yes.
William Gutschall,
Yes.
Jeff Spink,
Yes.
Doug Tysted,
Yes.
and Robert Owens.
Yes.
Motion carries again 7-0. The nothing on there because you need to put a final, don't we? Oh. Okay. This is all different. Never had that before.
Say, man, they really putting it in there.
Yeah. They wanted to make it tough on you. 11th County Planning Commission will now hear case number DEV 23-068 and 069 preliminary final plat Harris Corner as outlined in the post agenda. This is not a public hearing item. Staff report.
Before you is case DEV 23-068 and 069. It's a preliminary and final plat request for Harris Corner, which would be a 2-lot subdivision there at Harris Corner and Knight Road. The existing property is 578 Knight Road. There is an existing house and a few accessory structures. Those will remain with the proposed Lot 2 shown here. They are proposing to subdivide off the northern approximately 5-acre tract before them. As you'll note, they are proposing an access agreement for Lot 2 to access through the northwest corner of Lot 1. That is for only for Lot 2. Lot 1 would not be using that access point. Again, this is also requesting an exception from lot width to lot depth. Just so you guys can point quickly to it, you see that little corner that dips down there on the southwest corner of the lot. That is creating a situation where it is not complying with the 1-to-1 lot depth to lot width. It's weird, but that's how the calculations work their way out. The applicant did provide a narrative for their exception request. If you have any other if you have any other questions, please let us know. Staff has provided an analysis for you.
Okay. Will the applicant please come forward?
Joe Herring, Herring Surveying, 315 North Fifth. Staff again covered it well. The exception on the lot is because of the angled south property line that goes along Knight Road. The mean is, I think it's less than 4 or 5 feet, maybe different than meeting the width to depth ratio. So it's very close. So if you have any questions.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any questions or any additional information to be presented?
No, sir, just again, if you can separate the exception and the motion,
Yeah.
we appreciate it.
We've never done this before. So
No, that's why I'm
there's
trying
no
to remind
space
you.
on here to do both. So- Okay. Do I have a motion for the exception?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we grant the exception on DEV-23-068/069 for, this is a preliminary and a final plat. Or this is just the exception.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have a second?
Second.
Jaden? Okay, we have a motion on the floor for the, approve the exception for Article 50, Section 40.3I, lot depth and lot width on Ballsworth Addition subdivision. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Marcus Major,
Yes.
Jaden Bailey,
Yes.
Alan Stork,
Yes.
William Gutschall,
Yes.
Jeff Spink,
Yes.
Doug Tysted,
Yes.
Robert Owens.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Now I have a motion. Do I have a motion on the plat?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the plat for DEV-23-068/069, preliminary and a final plat.
Have a second?
Second it. Go ahead, Marcus.
Second.
Marcus. Motion on the floor with a second to approve case number DEV 23-068 and 069 preliminary and final plat of Harris Corner as outlined in the posted agenda. Any further discussion? None, and roll call vote. Marcus Major,
Yes.
Jaden Bailey,
Yes.
Alan Stork,
Yes.
William Gutschall,
Yes.
Jeff Spink,
Yes.
Doug Tysted,
Yes.
Robert Owens.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. The Board of County Commissioners will consider this item no earlier than July 26, 2023, 9 a.m. in the Leavenworth County Court. Oh, come on. Okay. Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now hear case number DEV 23-081 and 082, preliminary and final plat, Echo Valley, outlined in the posted agenda. This is another public hearing item. Plant staff report.
Right, before you is DEV 23-081 and 082, which is a request for preliminary and final plat for Echo Valley, which would be a 2-lot subdivision. This one might look a little familiar to you. They recently came through and rezoned this property to RR 2.5. They are proposing to split the two houses because currently there are two houses and some accessory structures on this lot. Lot 1 would be with the northern house and Lot 2 would be with the southern house. The accessory structures are proposed to remain with Lot 2. Each have their own access point. I will note that the southern access point there off of 225th Street is proposed to be removed because that does not meet our current access management policy. It is very close to that intersection. So the applicant has been willing to remove that to bring it into compliance with today's standards. This is also requesting an exception for Lot 1 from lot depth to lot width. It does not meet the 1-to-1 minimum ratio. The applicant has provided a narrative for you guys. Again, it's very close. So with that, staff has provided a full analysis for you to review. If you have any questions, let me know.
Okay. Will the applicant please come forward? Or do you have any questions to staff, by the way, before we went?
Bring on Joe.
Herring Surveying, 315 North Fifth Street. Staff covered it very well again. The exception on this one, normally a 330 by 330 lot is 2.5 acres, except when you have bearings that are a little off. The 330 by 330 came out to 2.496 acres. It's not a true 2.5, so we added 1 foot along the width to get it 331 by 330 to get the acreage correct. Thought that was an easier exception than trying to get something below 2.5 acres approved. So, any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any additional information to be presented?
No, sir.
Are there any questions or comments, commissioners? I'll entertain a motion on the exception.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion that we grant an exception for DEB-23-081 and 082.
I'll second.
Motion on the floor with a second to approve the exception from Article 50, Section 43I, lot depth to lot width for the Bosworth Addition subdivision. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote. Marcus Major.
Yes.
Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Alan Stork. Yes. William Gutschalk.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Doug Tysted.
Yes.
Robert Owens.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Okay, do I have a motion on the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve case DEV 23-081-082 for preliminary and final plat.
Second.
That was you?
Yes.
Okay. Motion on the floor to approve case number DEV 23-081 and 082, preliminary and final plat of Echo Valley. It's outlined in the posted agenda. Is there any further discussion? None. Roll call vote. Marcus Major.
Yes.
Jaden Bailey.
Yes.
Alan Stork.
Yes.
William Gutschalk.
Yes.
Jeff Spink.
Yes.
Doug Tysted.
Yes.
Robert Owens.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. The Board of County Commissioners will consider this item no earlier than July 26, 2023 at 9 a.m. at the Leavenworth County Courthouse. It's a mess. Okay, Leavenworth County Planning Commission will now consider item DEV 23-008, consideration of amendments to the 2006 Leavenworth County zoning and subdivision regulations as outlined in the posted agenda. Does require a public hearing. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Staff report.
All right. Before you is language amendments, primarily for the subdivision regulations. And that, if you are familiar with our regulations, that is multiple articles within the actual regulations that pertain to subdivision. So we've kind of separated them out by article. We gave you a pretty lengthy red line to go through. What I went ahead and did was, again, try and identify those key changes within each article so we can discuss them quickly rather than having to shuffle through. So if you guys don't mind, I'd start with Article 3, definitions. The proposed changes that staff is requesting is, one, to remove the boundary line adjustment from the definition sections and actually relocate it down to the Article 85, which is lot and tract splits. The reason or rationale for this is from staff's perspective, boundary line adjustments, these are actual regulations. These are not definitions that are in the definition section. They should belong in the article, and the closest thing we have to boundary line adjustments are actually tract splits and lot splits. So they're all three administrative processes that are part of the subdivision or subdividing in nature. So that's why we recommend them going into that article. Again, that's just because these are actual regulations that when we're reviewing a boundary line adjustment, we look to, so they really should not belong in the definition section. The next one was adding a definition for natural feature. This term is used in our regulations. It's used actually in the exceptions article for natural features and why, or one reason why somebody should grant an exception. So staff felt that an actual definition is warranted in this case, so we can go back to what we intend a natural feature to be. I'm so sorry, I'm losing my voice. The next one is for a side lot line. We do have an existing definition. However, based on changes in interpretation and all of that, that existing definition doesn't quite match with how we've interpreted it now. So we're just updating that definition to match that interpretation. The same goes for the rear line definition. So did anybody have any questions about that article?
No, go ahead.
Okay, all right. Moving on, the next one is Article 35, which is the preliminary plat procedure and content. This is the article that sets up the application process for preliminary plats and sets some required items that needs to be on a preliminary plat for it to be considered a complete plat. The recommended changes was first to the subdivision classification section. There used to be 3 different classes, Class A, Class B, Class C. We no longer have Class B because we no longer have that jurisdictional boundary within our regulations. So we're recommending to remove Class B, therefore removing any confusion as to what that might belong to. We no longer have that within our regulations. The next one would be regarding pre-application meetings, and that's to remove availability of public sewer, public water systems for information, and that is purely because our department doesn't, or the county for the most part, does not keep records of public water and public sewer. That is from different entities, and so if the applicant wants that information, they really need to contact those individuals. So, sorry, I might have to hand this off to John here in a minute. So we are requesting to remove that because we do not have access to that information. The next one is to remove the requirement to submit 15 paper copies for preliminary plats. We don't do this anymore. We've tried to move to more of a digital application, so we are requesting 1 digital and 1 paper copy to be submitted with the application, so this is just cleanup. And then the next one is kind of a big one. We are requesting to remove the notification requirement for preliminary plats. Per our regulations, we currently have to put a notification in the newspaper 7 days prior to the hearing. It's not a public hearing, but the hearing for each plat or preliminary plat that's going to be heard by you guys. There is no state statute requirement for this, so staff is recommending to remove it. Hopefully it'll help streamline deadline processes and all of that. So from staff's perspective, it would help applicants to get their stuff on the agenda faster. The next one is to remove the county surveyor from preliminary plat review requirements. He currently doesn't review preliminary plats. He actually reviews final plats only. So we recommend removing that from preliminary and actually putting that in the final plat section. We'll talk about that later, but again, in practice, this is not being actually done, so we want our regulations to reflect what we are currently doing. The next one is to amend, amendment process for preliminary plat approvals. I gotta look this one up. John, do you remember what this one is?
I don't. What you're seeing, most of this has been in cycle for the better part of 8 months and has been repetitively reviewed by staff and multiple departments. So you're going to see a lot of cleanup here. There's very little substantial change. We can go through each one of these items if you want us to, or we can move to the substantial change components and answer any questions you may have on the finite cleanup items.
I'm good with going through this essential ones.
Okay.
Are you guys?
Yeah, I'll definitely second that.
All right. Okay. So the next one then is number 8 there. That would be probably substantial because it is a change to current practice or policy. And actually, in our regulations, it said that the applicant still had to provide written and signed statements from utility companies. However, staff had been the one in actual practice that was going out and requesting that information from the water districts, the electric companies, the fire districts, and all that. We just wanted to clarify that that is actually the applicant's responsibility. There's major reasons why that is important. A, because when they're designing the subdivision, they should actually know what kind of water is accessible to this lot. They should know electricity, what they can and cannot get. So we're making sure everybody's aware that it's actually the applicant who has to obtain those written statements from those utility companies. We're also clarifying that it's from gas, electricity, water, fire response, and state and local transportation review. So, any questions on that one?
State and local transportation review, is that the traffic studies?
Not necessarily. It could be. Primarily what it is if a subdivision is accessing off of like a state highway or a KDOT controlled street of some type or highway, they would need to reach out to KDOT and get approval first. That plays into the access piece of a subdivision lot and therefore like lot configuration and such. So
it's a matter of practice currently. We're just reflecting that in the regulations at this point. So when you're going with the state or a federal highway, an access point to there, the access component is outside of the county control. That is done by the state level. So again, we're reflecting that in the regulations, what is already current practice.
All right.
If I might ask a question on this here. I know that we usually receive these as part of these preliminary plat, final plat. They're attached as attachments.
Mm-hmm.
I know that typically I'm trying to look for them. I'm wondering if there's a way that we can make an inclusion on that preliminary form, that first form we got, to say that those have been provided.
So now what's going to happen is it's not a complete application, and therefore we won't even start reviewing it until we have every single one. But if you want like an actual, checklist on the front of the
If
staff
that's the
report,
case,
So-
if we
we
won't
can.
see it unless it's all there, that probably answers the question completely for me at that point.
So we are actually developing checklists to form a finding of fact on each one of these actions that you're going to take. So in the future, you're going to see a checklist that encapsulates all of these components, and it either has this information or it doesn't. So that's in the works now.
Thank you.
I got one comment on this. I don't really have a problem with the developers going through this process, but I think the way we made that sudden change without notifying the developers or utility companies that this was going to happen now, it just seems like it would have been a reasonable thing to say effective September 1st. This is going to be the way we do it.
Well, that one's going to fall on me.
It isn't only me from my position as a developer, but also when I called the utility companies, they were shocked. This is different too. They weren't notified either. Neither here nor there, I guess, but that's just my comment.
In typical development process, the utility purveyance letters, in my experience, have never been provided by staff at any level. That's typically done by the applicant themselves. And the intent behind that is that the applicant is contacting those utilities, and the utility is actually taking a look at that plat. And if it can provide services as that plat is laid out, if any changes should occur, typically that's worked out with the utility prior to submittal to the county. That streamlines the process and avoids a problem down the road. There are, again, multiple reasons why staff should not be involved in the utility purveyance for developers. And as far as timeline to switch that over, again, the intent is to capture as many of these. We have quite a few development actions going on right now. Get this ahead of that large curve of development actions. And while it is quick, I didn't see another option there other than to wait until all of these went through, and I didn't think that was appropriate. So that's on me.
I suppose one concern I might have, in instances where something is acceptable from one of these entities, but they do have remaining concerns. In previous packets, we've been able to see that in documentation through email and things of that nature. Will we still have access to that type of information?
You will, yes. The intent there, again, we're getting that letter from the utility themselves, their engineer or someone in charge, along with those criteria that they need for that particular development. We then, in turn, go to the applicant and say, how are these going to be addressed? If that is a caveat for utility purveyance, well, then we need to know that from the utility company, and that is traditionally how it's done anyway. So you will see that communication.
The last one there is just updating road construction and stormwater drainage. It had an outdated date on it. Okay, so the next article is Article 40, which is the final plat procedure content action by the Planning Commission. Again, this is similar to the preliminary plat article. It sets up the application requirements for a final plat and also the requirements or what's supposed to be on a final plat to be considered a complete plat. As mentioned, that county surveyor is going to be moved to this section, so that fixes that. Another somewhat big change is amending the title report requirement to 30 days prior to submittal. It is 45. We're recommending going it to 30. That actually matches more or other jurisdictions with these requirements. Again, we just want to make sure that we have the most accurate information for that parcel when we're reviewing these requests. So that's why we're requesting the 30 days. Does anybody have questions about that? Okay.
Cross-access easements.
Okay, the next one is the cross-access. The rest of this is just minor things matching our current practices. Article 43, cross-access easement. This is just a statement clarifying that road and drainage plans must comply with a plan set standards that's been prepared by the Public Works Department. This is not requiring them to meet certain standards by any stretch of the imagination. This is just them saying, or the Public Works Department saying, when we receive these sets of plans, we want to see X, Y, and Z on those plans. But it's not, as mentioned, requiring that they be paved in any way, shape, or form or anything like that. It's just the plan specific sets and what should be in those plans to be considered a complete road plan and a complete drainage study.
So again, all of this is an attempt to get all the information as soon as we can in the process so that we're not holding out for information throughout the process. Again, moving that to the front side versus waiting to the final plat to acquire everything. Just making sure everybody's thinking about that and placing that information where it needs to be so we don't have multiple reviews. You know, we can trim the review times down and make the process more streamlined.
The next one is Article 50, minimum subdivision design standards and general requirements. Most of these, again, are just reflecting changes that have happened in other parts of our codes and regulations, and also just matching what our current practices are. I think the biggest one, with the amending water supply performance bonds, it currently says that it should be held by the county engineer. We are recommending that be changed to applicable water districts. The county does not want to hold water bonds. That's not our business. That's the water district. So they should be the ones holding that bond.
So again, what you're seeing is the regulations matching current practice as much as is possible. If the regulation's not being used, our recommendation is to change it or remove it. If you're doing something outside of that regulation, that needs to be amended to reflect that current practice. And that's what you're seeing here.
There is one other one, the amending side lot line requirements. If you look at that language, it's a departure. It would allow for small deviations that could be approved administratively from like the straight line, the parallel and perpendicular language that we currently have in place. You might have seen a few things go through. Hopefully this will reduce the request for exceptions in some ways. However, this is for small deviations. Still, major deviations from that requirement would come before you for exceptions.
So moving to what I believe is probably the biggest change here is lot and tract splits, boundary line adjustments. Typically, that's an administrative process currently, and outside of that administrative process, developers or people have been told to go through the planning process. I think we need to put that in the Planning Commission's venue here, that needs to be under your purview. So if we can't approve it administratively, if there's something outside of the regulations, then it is our intent to bring it to the Planning Commission and you make the determination on it. That way, they don't have to go through the standard plating process. It allows them a quicker turnaround time, not asking them to do something that's outside of bounds here. And it is a typical process used in many communities. Again, if it's outside of the administrative permissions that we have to approve, it goes directly to Planning Commission, and then you make the determination. That's it. It does not go to the Board of County Commissioners. Once you decide, that's all. And that's that proposed change.
Under Article 85.
Yep. So do you have any questions about that? And are you okay with that responsibility? I would think that you would be.
Well, that's pretty much when we send something to the variance committee type of deal. I mean,
It would not be the Board of Zoning Appeals. It would be the Planning
it'd
Commission.
just
that
be
would
us.
review it.
We'll have the final say-so.
You'll have the final say-so on those lot and tract splits that are outside the authority of administrative splits. We just think that's the way it needs to be.
Well, that makes sense.
Splits. Yep.
Okay. Go ahead.
And that's kind of it, unless you guys saw something else that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Are there any other regulations that anybody wanted to talk about?
Well, have you guys talked about anything about carbon neutral building yet, where they're not going to hook up to a power source?
Not in our regulations currently. We've had a discussion with a singular individual. I don't know that that is moving forward. I'm sure that we'll have those conversations with people in the future. That to me is a PUD element and a standalone thing that you would consider off a development plan. And it would have to be very, very refined before it got to this body to make a decision. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah.
This last part that was in the packet.
That is a presentation that I gave to the Board of County Commissioners. That entails not just the changes that you have here, but some of the things you heard tonight, existing policy and whether they wanted to see that enforced. The reason I took it to the Board of County Commissioners is because there were no changes. This was existing policy, and I needed to know if that their intent was for me to enforce that. And the answer we got that night was yes.
Oh, that's great. I just think that's wonderful. I've been kind of pushing for that for quite a while.
So we included it, and so you knew what was there.
Okay, great. I think it's fantastic. Okay, we'll proceed on unless anybody has any questions. Upon opening the public comment portion of this hearing, those of you who wish to speak either for or against this item upon recognition will give your name and address each time you get to speak. This is necessary since the public hearing is being recorded. The public comment portion of this hearing is now open. We will now hear from individuals present wishing to speak in favor or opposition of this request. Figured that's why you were here.
I was here for a lot of reasons. Joe Herring, surveying 315 North Fifth. I made some notes, so it's going to be a little out of order from what they presented. The water bond that the county would hold has never been enforced. I don't recall us ever holding a water bond at the county level or collecting one. I do support getting the county's involvement out of it. So I'm not really for or against these. But I would also suggest that we just remove that regulation completely, strike it from the county regulations. And if the developer and the water have some agreement, let them do that. That should not be the county's business. We should not be protecting the water districts as a county. That should be their issue with the developer. First one. The second one that's, again, out of order was on the title commitment submittal. I thought it's always been 30 days. I've been enforced 30 days forever. And I've always argued to keep it at 45. And for the reason is, if a title company creates a title commitment exactly 30 days from the time of the final plat submittal, it doesn't use that date. The date the title commitment uses is the last time our county system has been updated, which could have been 7 days prior. So the day you requested it could already be outdated. So I would just like to see it kept at 45 days instead of 30 and have the 45 days actually enforced instead of 30 days. The other ones going through here, we've already had some discussion on utility letters, and I've talked with staff about this. In adding the fire department to it, the fire suppression, I understand that we want to know, the fire department district needs to know that, hey, there's a development coming and everything else, but we had a work session earlier and one of your prominent developers says the county has no fire suppression in the whole county. We don't have the pressure to provide it anyway, so why are we requiring a letter to come forward from the fire district when all necessarily we need is, hey, you're in fire district Sherman or you're in Reno, and inherently you have some coverage and some from that district. So I do think that removing that is a thing, because right now we're only required to submit power, water, and gas if you're using gas. We have been submitting fire letters because, even though it's not an approved yet, because we've been asked to, and it has delayed a couple plats. But, you know, I just don't see the need, especially with the earlier developer saying, you know, we got fire districts. There is no suppression in our county. So, my thoughts on that. I don't understand what the local transportation review is. We don't really have a transportation policy. I don't. For clarification, I understand state and federal, if it's a federal highway, state highway, but what's the local review?
One example would be if you're accessing off like a city-controlled street. So, yeah, you would need to get from Baser, Leavenworth, or Lansing.
Or like on the county line, we're accessing a Jeff County road. We would need that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for that clarification. I'm just going to flip through here. There are some other notes that I'll get to. I talked about the water bond. Get to the section 40 when we're talking about lot lines and being able to administratively approve an angle break, a small angle break in a line. I really appreciate that. That would help a lot with, you know, track splits or boundary line adjustments that have that little angle break. We don't have to go through the platting. I'd really like to see allow 3, and the only reason for 3 in a line is if you're going around a pond or a building that may have been put in the wrong place and you need to go around it. Your first break gets you away from it. Your second break takes you along parallel with it. Your third break gets you back to your original line. And I think that's important when we're trying to uniformly develop. You can go around and you can come back to your original line and then continue on. That's a minor change, you know, something to talk about. Would like to see that happen. And I do want to understand that, you know, structures could be considered a minor, that structures will be considered in that we can go around structures.
Structures by ponds?
Structures,
creeks,
just structures.
Yep, barns,
Fences.
Well, I think that'll need a little more discussion. And again, at this point, I think, and I don't want to interrupt the public hearing. If I can respond if you want me to. I think if we have something that is extenuating, it's outside of the simple confines of the administrative approval process, then you bring your concerns and your caveats to this body, and they make the determination.
So that's what potentially could be allowed, but it will come to this board.
Right. You would make your, again, if it's outside the confines of the administrative process, then it would come to the planning commission only, and the planning commission would make the determination.
Okay, so what features would be considered within the confines?
If it's strictly spelled out in the administrative process, if it's not strictly spelled out in the administrative process, then it comes to the planning commission.
Okay. I guess I'd have to go back and read to get the specifics on what we can follow.
Well, again, that the proposed
Yeah.
process is one that eliminates your need to plat that
Right.
you currently have
We
to
appreciate
do,
that.
and try and provide an additional point of access to keep your splits moving, as opposed to adding another 30 days on top of that to go to the governing body. So,
Right.
Or 60 days to go to this board and then the governing body. So again, the intent there is to add more tools in your toolbox
Yes.
so that you can come to this board and have them make a determination when staff really shouldn't be extending themselves to accommodate every possible angle. That should be your responsibility and your decision as a body.
So when we have any angle breaks, they all come here?
Not every angle break,
Not
but if
every
there are
angle.
multiple angle breaks, I don't have a specific number of angle breaks or sizes of ponds or barns or fences
Okay.
that I can accommodate your question with tonight. Again, I would say if it doesn't meet the clear definition defined in the administrative process, then the logical place for that to happen
Is
again,
here. So
is the planning commission.
to bring a 3-angle break line back here possibly could come to the planning commission, get approval without going to the BOCC.
Right.
Okay. I appreciate the direct communication here. That does clear some things up for me. Okay. I understand that. I get that. The last one on section 35, it says, if an exception is requested, the request should be made in writing no less than 30 days prior to anticipated meeting, much like we just talked about, trying to help speed these up and keep them going. Let's don't have that 30 days in there. It won't be a public hearing. It's not of a notification. There is no deadline to meet. If there is an issue, the agenda comes out a week before your meeting. Let's make it before the agenda comes out. That request has to be in writing, because on lot splits and boundary line adjustments, we may submit them. Within 2 weeks, we get reviews back, and then at that time, they say, hey, you're going to need to go to the planning commission. Well, we should have time to get that letter to you if that 30 days was reduced down. It would just speed the process up. There's no public notification. There's no state statute on that. It's just a request to keep it going at a faster pace. So, appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? Is there any additional information to be presented?
No.
The public comment portion of this hearing is now closed. Are any questions or comments, commissioners? The water bond, is that for, can you explain that? I know we used to have them put money up for fire hydrants when they weren't able to be put in. Is that what that's for?
Well, that's one component of it. The way I read that regulation, I think it's the intent to protect the system as well. So not necessarily the system for the water district, but to make sure that you have potable water past the developed area, so that you have something to connect to past that. Because unless you're 5 acres or higher, you're not going to go on a well. And without that water system there, it makes it very difficult to plat and develop.
Right.
So I think that it has multiple intent. Again, I don't think that the county needs to hold those bonds. And if the water district doesn't want the bond, they don't have to take the bond. Again, essentially what we're doing is we're putting that to the responsible jurisdiction having authority.
Understand that. Anyone else have any questions?
Have you discussed that with the water district?
There are multiple water districts out there, and again, no, we haven't discussed it with each one, but they don't have to collect that bond. It simply diverts it from here. If they choose not to do that, then they choose not to do that. It will come in that purveyance letter. They have we cannot mandate that they take that bond. It's simply saying that a bond in this situation is typically required, but the county doesn't hold it. If one is required, then the water district itself would hold it. That's the intent of that regulation.
Makes sense. Any other questions?
Can you explain to me some more, based on our work session, and then tonight it came up again, reference the fire district chief, and, I mean, 'cause that,
Well, and I understand the concern from a developer standpoint. I also understand the fire chief's concern. You have to understand that it's not simply fire suppression that they should be looking at. They should be looking at access for every one of their vehicles to be able to get into that particular subdivision and get out of that subdivision. Even if you have a pumper truck, once the pumper truck goes dry, what are you going to do? You probably should have another way to fill that truck, shouldn't you? So I think those are the concerns that they're really trying to address. And again, we can't control what the opinion of fire chiefs are going to be. We simply include it in the packet and send it along. We can provide a recommendation, but again, we think that those fire chiefs ought to have, those fire districts ought to have the opportunity to comment on developments that occur within the boundaries of what they have to protect.
and they can prohibit or end. Okay.
They cannot.
They just give an opinion.
They give an opinion.
Their advice. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're going to have opinions from fire chiefs that are going to vary. Again, what we're looking for is that the fire district has reviewed the plat. They've seen it. We want them to be aware of what's going on within their.
We had one about a year ago, or less than a year ago, right? I mean, the fire chief came himself.
Right.
Well, again, we can't. We think it's better for them to have an opportunity to see what's going on in their district and provide comment so that you can weigh that in your deliberation.
If they don't make a comment, they don't make a comment.
Right.
Anything else? Any other questions? Or I'll entertain a motion.
Well, do we consider some of the, are we going to consider, review, and look at some of the agenda items that were just mentioned by Mr. Herring, or we say we're going to approve these as we're...
That's entirely up to you. You can continue your public hearing if you want to a later date, if you want additional information, or you want to, again, I don't want to speak for legal on this.
Is this something that, I mean, he brought some value added points. I just don't want to just up and, well, thank you very much. Not going to make any changes. We're just going to approve as it's written.
This commission does not have to vote on this tonight. You can hold it over to the next one to wait for, to consider the items that were raised. This really is up to you. You can continue the public hearing to another time. You can conclude the public hearing and wait for some feedback from staff, or just consider it yourself on what you wish to vote on. You could vote on them one by one. You can vote on them as a package. So it's really what makes sense for this commission to have comfort in how you adopt these regulations or don't adopt these regulations.
Are there any restrictions or requirements on what we can table for how long? Does it have to be tabled for the next meeting?
I know it does have to be tabled to a date certain. I'm not aware of a restriction that would require you to do it at the next meeting. I know that if you're going to continue the public hearing, we need to notice up the continuation of that. So.
Some of his notes, the one that still sticks in my mind is the 45 versus 30 days aspect. I guess I'm not as familiar with the process as the pros and cons of either. I'm a proponent in terms of streamlining, I can say that, and not making it overly difficult timeline-wise. Does staff have thoughts on that?
I don't think that we're necessarily married to that. We were trying to be in conformance with other jurisdictions around us. And I think currently we have a 45-day criteria, and that seems to function well. But again, when you're writing policy or you're refining policy, you want to have some continuity with jurisdictions around you. That helps, contractors, it helps surveyors, it helps project managers. So to answer your question, if it were left at 45 days, we would be perfectly fine with that from a staff level. So we might be able to flesh these out. If you want to do that, I'm more than happy to do that tonight. As far as the, please, I don't want to take over the meeting. Does anyone else have additional questions?
30 to 45 days, I respect that part of it, of looking at your comparables. But also, I think you have to take in context of the operational standards that most of the people in this county are used to. And so, if we kept it at 45 days, I think that falls more in line with what we're already used to. That's my own opinion.
I mean, what happens if 30 days come and they don't have what they need?
Well, again, if it's outside of that particular criteria, then it would be a question of whether you accept the application or not. So all of these components play on the other. So at the end of the day, 45 days is not a big issue for staff. Again, that was more continuity with adjoining jurisdictions than it was necessarily a hardline requirement from us.
What effect would this have on staff if we decided that we wanted to table this for 30 days? Is this a drop-dead thing?
What other issues are there besides the 45 days that he brought up? I thought he kind of...
This is an awful lot to digest.
Yeah.
It is. I would like to have some time to go through this thing and talk to some people and find out just exactly what effect this is going to have.
Well, again,
we don't need to. I like the idea of streamlining. It's just my pet peeve.
Sure.
Stuff drug out, but at the same time, I don't want to get into something that I approve and then I find out 90 days from now that it's just added 30 days to the process.
Or you put more stipulations.
I think this is an awful lot to digest and say tonight, yeah, we're going to approve all this.
And you don't want to streamline to the detriment of safety or anything else.
Well, again, I hate to interrupt, but this is reflecting what currently happens, with the exception of the lot and track splits. This is what you're operating under right now. This makes your regulations go along with what you currently do. So, from a staff perspective, the changes they're really not changes. They're just reflecting your current practice.
We're just following the laws that were written a long time ago, aren't we?
Well, we're trying to make the laws and what you do go together.
Yeah.
So really, the two sticking points of something that is changing would prospectively be 30 to 45 days, and then allowing this board to be the final say on track splits.
Yeah, and I think you got support from the public on that, unless I misheard that. Yeah. And again, I think the appropriate board, and maybe you disagree, but the appropriate board to hear a lot or track split outside of a real finite element from an administrative standpoint should be this board, because you deal with land use, you deal with subdivision of land. So that is a logical extension of what you should be doing, in my opinion, anyway. So I don't see that as a huge hurdle. And the 45 days is not one that that's not a hill we're going to die on. If you want to keep 45 days, then we have no issue with that at all.
So then the question would be, if we wanted to make a motion saying change it to 45 days.
Yeah.
And if we all agree that we like to be the final body on those finite number of track splits, then everything else is business as usual.
So we just need to make a motion to approve the changes by changing to 30 to 45 days. I'll entertain a motion however you guys want to go.
Okay, I'll say we approve DEV 23-046 with the exception of the change. We will keep the 45 days from the 30 that was mentioned in the written article.
I'll second that.
Have a motion on the floor and a second to approve case number, go back to this, 23-008, consideration.
Oh, sorry. Where was I at? I was just reading what was put in front of me. Sorry.
That's when I was like, what are you reading from?
Amendments of the 2006 Leavenworth County zoning and subdivision regulations as outlined in the posted agenda, with the exception of changing the 30 days to review to 40, or was it 45?
45.
5 days. Is there any further discussion? Have a roll call vote. Marcus Major,
Yes.
Jaden Bailey,
Yes.
Alan Stork,
No.
and the reason you needed more
I
time.
would just like, I'd just feel a lot more comfortable if I had time to really go through this thing, line by line. I know questions are going to come up. I know people that I'd like to talk to about it. That's my reasoning. I don't have a problem. I think it's all great, and I think your intent is wonderful. But I just feel a lot more comfortable if I had time to go through this thing line by line. That's an awful lot here.
William Gutschuk,
Yes.
Jeff Spink,
Yes.
Doug Tysted,
Yes.
Robert Owens.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1. The Board of County Commissioners will consider this item no earlier than 9 a.m. on August the 2nd, 2023 in Leavenworth County Courthouse. Okay, anything else? We're adjourned.